Are Gibson Les Paul guitars in trouble now that we have Epiphone Les Paul guitars with a Gibson headstock, handcrafted in China? Speaking of China, there's an old Chinese proverb that says a guitar is only as good as the part made by the worst employee at the factory. So we'll look at all the parts and then we'll see how good it is. It almost doesn't make any sense to review guitars because every guitar is going to be different. So the guitar that I'm reviewing might not be anything like the guitar that you'll end up buying. Even two guitars of the same exact make and model are going to be different. So today, instead of reviewing the actual guitar that's on my workbench, I'll be reviewing each and every individual part on that guitar, and I'll try to find the worst part, which will tell us how good or bad that guitar is. Now that's that guitar, the one on my workbench, not your guitar. And that might also tell us if the old Chinese proverb, only a Gibson is good enough, might be outdated. So welcome back to Guitar Quackery, and let's get on with it. Here's a guitar. I'll review it for you. We'll put it on the bench. We'll look at everything. And I guess we'll find which part is the worst part, which is going to define how good the guitar is. Should we start with a neck relief? Why not? I am simply going to measure the relief on both sides using feeler gauges, just to see if it's the same on both sides or maybe not. So the relief is obviously adjustable, so it doesn't really matter how it comes from the factory, as long as we don't have some kind of severe back bow issue that cannot be corrected, or if we have a differential relief, meaning more relief on one side than on the other, that we maintain that we have more relief on the bass side. So here on the bass side, we have 4/1000ths of an inch. And now if we switch over to the treble side, we will see if it's the same on the other side. So no. Next one is 3/1000ths of an inch. I'm still not seeing relief here. So I have a smaller feeler gauge. This is 2/1000ths of an inch. I just took it out of this set. Let's have a look. And yes, so as it is, we had 4/1000ths of an inch on the bass side, 2/1000ths on the treble side, and I can show you a close-up of this so that you can see the measurement. It does say 002, which means 2/1000ths of an inch relief. Okay. So like I said, the relief is adjustable. This guitar comes with a two-way truss rod, which means that if it does have a back bow, you can crank up the truss rod counterclockwise and add some relief. What I don't like about that is that when that is necessary, you are basically helping the strings to pull the neck into a relief. And that means that it's a bad neck. So the next thing I want to check is if this truss rod is cranked up clockwise or counterclockwise. So it does come with a wrench. Well, it's an Allen key. It's a 4mm. So let's see how it fits. I already removed the truss rod cover, which is this one. So it's a 3-point truss rod cover, not like a Gibson, because it's an Epiphone. Let's see if this fits. So it does fit, but unfortunately, it's hitting the nut. And I do have a 4 millimeter truss rod Allen key that is slightly longer on this side. So let's see how this one fits. See, now it doesn't hit the nut. So now we want to see if we release the truss rod, if we turn it counterclockwise, if we are releasing tension or adding tension. So let me reposition this. So we are releasing it, so that's good. And now that we've released our truss rod tension, I want to see how much relief we have on the treble side. Hopefully, we'll see 0.006 of an inch of relief, which would be this feeler gauge here. Let's see. No. Let's try 4. Nope. 3. Yep. So let's release it a little further. Oh, so now it's completely loose. So when it's completely loose, let's see how much relief we have. 3 1/1000s, 4, 5, and 6 doesn't fit. So with a truss rod completely loose, you see, we have 5, did I say 5 1/1000s of an inch on the treble side, and let's see how much we have here. This is 8 1/1000s. Nope. 6. Yeah. So I don't have 7 1/1000s. I don't have a 7 1/1000 feeler gauge, so it could be 7 1/1000s. But here we measured 6. So I just want to show you this, between 6 and 8, maybe. Maybe it's 7 1/1000s of an inch. I don't really know. So it's good. It's not perfect. I prefer when the truss rod does have a little tension, okay? That's just my preference because that makes it a good neck. Not that this is a bad neck. It is a decent neck. So speaking of the neck, one thing that I always like to check is to see if there might be a twist in the neck. So it's a brand new guitar. We hope not, but we don't know until we check. I have a stirring stick. So we'll just place it here. So if you use a stirring stick, just make sure it's straight. All right. So we'll place it over here loosely. So we don't really want the strings to push it and bend it. So here it's catching. And now I am going to just lower this camera so that we see how it's aligning with the body. Let me zoom in. And I tell you, I like what I see, I think. Here, let me change focus. So we have our stirring stick in focus now, and you can see that it's aligning with the binding. So this means that we do not have a twisted neck. That's also good. Let's have a look at, so remember, we're trying to find the worst made part on this guitar, and that'll determine how good the guitar is. So we're still looking. Let's just have a quick overview of the guitar first. So it is a Epiphone Inspired by Gibson. So we do see the Epiphone logo on a Gibson headstock, kind of, because a Gibson headstock would have 2 screw holes and a different truss rod opening, but this is what it is. Also, a Gibson guitar would have a different nut. This is a really wide nut that we see on an Epiphone, and it is buried underneath the veneer like on a Gibson, but it's a much wider nut, okay? It doesn't have fret nibs. The frets look pretty good, all right? Now, it does have Good components. So this is a Switchcraft switch. How do you know that? Well, if you unscrew this, you can see that it has a large hole. Now here, I have an import switch tip. And let's compare the two. And you can see how much smaller that hole is. So this will not fit on a Gibson guitar, which has a Switchcraft switch. So this is why they remove these switch tips in guitars in showrooms, because people steal them often. All right, let's continue. The pickups are Gibson pickups, but the pickup rings are Epiphone. Okay, now this bridge is really good. It's more like a Gibson bridge. An Epiphone bridge has much larger holes and different posts. We are going to remove the strings and then remove the hardware, and we'll look at the guitar closely. And here's the, tailpiece, stop bar, whatever you want to call it. And then there's a pick guard. Obviously, it's not going to be a Gibson pick guard because it has to cut around the Epiphone size pickup rings. So this is the strap button. The finish looks like this. So this is not a Gibson style finish. And this is a veneer top. And here is the other strap button. And these are these components. You can see them here. Okay. So this all looks good. Now, it is a Gibson style headstock in terms of the shape, but, it's made differently. All right, so that's one thing to keep in mind. Now, it's time to flip the guitar on its belly. I already removed these covers so that we can just look inside. And we confirm here that it is a Switchcraft switch. It's the long one. They make short ones and long ones. So this is a long one. And here I have a short one as well. So both of them are Switchcraft brand. This one is better. So the better one is here. CTS pots. It says CTS on them. And I'd like to show you a close-up of the wiring. So here, not the best solder job on this one. I also don't know what's up with that. Why is it, like this? So this is coming from the bridge pickup. This is coming from the neck pickup. And it's been soldered like this. Okay. Decent capacitors. And this is the output jack, the most important part on an electric guitar, because if this fails, you cannot play the guitar. And this is also a Switchcraft output jack. You can tell because it's massive. All right. It is a two-piece back. We can see this glue joint. It shows up here as well. What else? Let's have a look at the neck. So this flecking pattern on the side here with the lines going like this, that's called fleck, is here on the side, which means that this is not a quarter sawn neck. It's also not flat sawn. It's rift sawn, which means that the growth rings are actually at an angle, maybe 45 or 30 degrees, something like that, right? In this case. It is handcrafted in China, and it has these tuners, Epiphone Deluxe tuners. Now, I also wanted to show this side. So these are the vintage tuners style. this could have been. So here we're discovering, the work of a not very skilled factory worker, I guess. So that's already a little bit of a red flag. Next, we'll have a look at the nut. But if you ever watch Guitar Quackery, you know that I like to look at the nut through the microscope. And you know what? I almost forgot to show you something important. We'll look at the scaling of this guitar. So Epiphone should have, 24.75 inch scaling, right? And we'll see if that's the case. So I have the equipment, I have the tools. All we need to do is take a measurement. This is how it works. So we place this is called a tri-beam. We place it, let's say here, and we hit the nut like that. And then we look at this. And here it says, as you can see, 24.75, but I can see that it's not aligning perfectly with the center of this fret. Now, most Gibson guitars would have 24.625 scaling, right? But Epiphone guitars would have 24.75. So it's not exactly on spec, but it is close enough. On spec meaning Epiphone spec. Okay? And now it is time to look at the nut. Something I always do. And we'll also look at the frets. But I'm going to remove the strings. We'll take a break, and then we'll go over the frets with the fret rocker and look at the frets that way. All right? So let's see. What do we see here? Well, we're looking at the string slots. So this is the high E. Let's see if it wiggles. It does not wiggle here. There should be a little relief on the back. And, we do have a little relief. Now let's lift the string to see how it's seated. Well, there's a witness point right there at the back. We don't really like to see that. We want to see just the strong witness point at the tip right there. That's, where the string starts vibrating, and that's where the string should be anchored. Now let's look at the B string. So we see some slightly sloppy work there, I guess. Well, the string slightly moves inside of the nut. And, what I really don't like seeing is this zigzagging of the string. So that's, not desirable, obviously. It should just go straight through, but it seems like it's first bending in this direction and then obviously towards the tuner. Now let's look at the G string. Fine, I guess. Okay, and the D string. Well, this is where I would say we found the work of the least skilled factory worker, because that's definitely not good. All right, so let me just zoom out a little bit, and let's detune the string and remove it, and let's look at the bottom of the string slot. I would say this is an issue, right? So we have a pretty sloppy string slot. Now let's put the string back and let's tune the guitar. Well, I'm not really tuning it. Let's see if the string is actually moving
inside of the string slot. So that's really not what we want to see at all. So I would say if we were looking for the part of the guitar that was made by the worst factory employee, I think we just found it. I can't. Well, we'll look at the frets later, but this is a pretty bad nut because of this one string slot. So now we'll look at a string. Better, but we do see some motion inside of the string slot. So let's remove the string and see. Well, it flares out a little bit here at the front, which is why we have that motion. So not the best. And then we have the low E. Let's pull it out. They didn't clean up. It's not the worst. It could have been better, but I would say it's passable.
If you like non-sponsored, unbiased reviews, you're already in the right channel. So let your friends know. Also, post some links on guitar forums. You can also buy me a coffee if you want to buy me a coffee. And there's also a super thanks button you can click on. And I want to tell you, this review is going to be worth your time because there is going to be some unexpected bonus material. Well, I say unexpected because I wasn't expecting to discover something, which I did. And you're going to want to see that. So somewhere inside of this review, there's some bonus material. So stick around till the end.
We're continuing now. The guitar's been stripped naked. So, yeah, if you have young children, please, viewer discretion is strongly advised. We'll have a close look at this guitar now without the strings on and with the hardware loose. So let's do it. Here we can see that this is a pickup, custom bucker, right? And we can see here we have the long neck tenon, right? Now, this is also a custom bucker. It says right there, patent applied for. And we can see the maple cap. Now, it is my understanding that this is a veneer, but you can't see it because of the overspray. Now, I'm not sure what this line is here, if this is two pieces together. Let's look at the other side. No, it's one piece, right? But here we can see that it's book matched. So yeah, it is a veneer. These posts are really good. So they do wiggle a little bit, but this is adjustable. And then this is adjustable too. So these bushings are threaded and you can adjust this up and down and this as well. So for those of you who like adjustments, plenty of adjustments here. And this is the, this post. Let's remove it. I don't have any issues with this at all, okay? And we can look at the bridge. So what we see. And then we have this. Okay, so they are using really good components for this guitar. And this was, by the way, the new inspired by Gibson Epiphone thing. So next we're going to look at the frets, and we are going to have a second look at the nut. I'm going to actually put the guitar under this microscope so that we can have a look at the nut, because we can see some details that we can see using this microscope that the other one does not show. Let me just focus, and then we'll switch to this camera here. So here, this is the high E string. We can see some glue squeeze out. I mean, it's not really squeeze out. It just kind of is there. So they just squirted some super glue there. So the nut was installed after the neck was made. So not like on a Gibson. So this part was not inspired by Gibson, I would say. Because on a Gibson, the nut on a Gibson is installed before they spray it so that they can really finish it off. So that it's nice and flush with the binding and everything, and then they spray it over. So you have a sprayer on the two sides of the nut. Plus, like I said, it's a different size nut on a Gibson guitar. Now, this is once again the B string, the G string. Okay, nothing much to see there. And then this is the horrible D string, D, as in Delta. All right, so far, this is the worst part of the guitar. This one's not too bad. It's passable. It does flare out at the front, but I didn't see a lot of wiggling. And this one was just left a little sloppy. Okay, now the nut is tusk. And here, once again, we see that it's not flush with the binding or with the side of the neck, which means they installed it after the neck was finished. All right. And now we will inspect the frets using the fret rocker, and then we'll look at the frets under the microscope as well. So I am just going to do a standard fret rocker exam. Let's see. Okay, so these frets so far are even. I'm not detecting any uneven frets. Nothing so far. Okay, I can speed up a little bit. I'm not finding any uneven frets at all, actually. So the frets are really, really good. And I also want to see if they're seated all the way. No, not quite. But to be perfectly honest, the gaps are minimal. And we have no gaps on the sides. So what this means is that the frets are just slightly over radiused. So this one, I can't even detect a gap on this side. Maybe here, not even. So the frets are very slightly over radius, which is actually, you could say that it's a good thing, so that they're flush on the two sides, so that especially the high E string, if it slips, it doesn't get caught under the fret. And now we'll look at the fret through the microscope. Why don't we do that? Where's my phone? Yeah, I have my switcher on my phone. Okay, so here it is. We have a view of the, which fret is this? This one, the 4th fret here, for example. Maybe a little more light, maybe a little more in focus. All right, so they did some fret and dressing by hand, and then they just sanded it with maybe, I don't even think this is 400 grit. I think this is maybe 320 or so. Okay, now the crowns of the frets are not too bad. here they are not too good. So what I think they did is they sanded the fret ends with sandpaper. I'll show you the technique. So I'll be working on this guitar, and I will make sure that we don't have any scratches on the frets. So this is typical. What they do is they basically take sandpaper like this, and then they just do this. So we saw that they were hitting the sides and a little bit on top of the crowns here, but not in the middle, which means that they were just doing this, and then the same thing on the other side, and that's how they dressed the frets. Now here I am noticing something, and it looks like glue squeeze out. This is the 9th fret, so why don't we have a closer look at that? Because I am curious to know if the frets are glued in or not. So here, you can see this glue. I'm gonna say this is glue, right? So I think that this would indicate that the frets are glued in, which is actually a good thing.
So who's the winner? In other words, which one of the factory workers managed to do the worst job on this guitar? Well, I would say honorable mention goes to the worker who installed the ferrules on the headstock, because they're, slightly crooked. Third place goes to the worker who did the fret ends. They're kind of rough around the edges, but the guitar works. Second place goes to the worker who did the wiring. There are some solder joints there that I really didn't like. And first place goes to the person who filed the nut. I'll actually be replacing the nut on this guitar. All right. So there's more to come. But before we get to the next part of this video, I want to mention that I noticed that a lot of you missed a very important announcement video on this channel titled "The Future of Guitar Repairs." You should really watch it, because I show you how 3D scanners can be used to diagnose guitars in a guitar repair shop. And in this case, I'll be using a 3D scanner to help me with this review. And that's what you're about to see.
I'll show you how I prepped the guitar for 3D scanning. So here I have these two side rails, which are prepped with these markers. They're called tracking markers. I have these tracking markers here. They're not stickers. I just kind of, well, they are stickers, but I just double them up like this so they can just be placed on the guitar. They just shouldn't move once I start scanning. And also, what's very important here is that I release the truss rod completely, because I'm scanning without strings. I basically want to know if the neck has a natural back bow or a natural relief. I just want to know, or if it's completely straight. So now I can simply start scanning. So here you can see on the screen that the scanner is picking up an image. I am only going to scan the fingerboard, right? So as I scan, it'll start turning green once I capture a complete scan. And I just continue doing this until everything turns green. So Here it is. And once I complete the scan, I am going to render the scan. And then we are going to look at the scan in a 3D software to analyze it. And we are going to be able to see the topography of this fingerboard. Okay, we're actually almost done. It's taking some extra time because the fingerboard is dark. So there are options. I could use a scanning spray, but I decided not to use a scanning spray this time because it's not always necessary, and I prefer not to. Okay, so here we even see the image of the guitar. Right there, it's scanning the pickups. It doesn't seem to be scanning the body too much, but we can clearly see the fingerboard, which is all we want. So to be perfectly honest, it doesn't have to completely turn green. I think we do have enough information already. And I am going to stop the scan now. I'll just capture from this side so that I don't have gaps between the tops of the frets and the fingerboard. Okay, this looks okay to me. Now let's see what we got. Here. This is the 3D scan. And I am going to click this button here. No, this one. Oh, no, this one. Complete scan. It's processing the scan. And it turns to blue. And the bottom turns orange. Now we can simply select the unwanted parts. They turn red. And then we just delete them. So I'm going to continue cleaning up the scan. And then we are going to render it, export it, and open it in a different software to analyze it.
It's almost time for our bonus material. Like I said, it's unexpected, but I discovered something, and since I do non-sponsored reviews, they are unbiased. I just show it how it is. So stick around because you're going to want to see that because it's actually very important. But before we do that, why don't we analyze the 3D scan? So here it is. This is the 3D scan of the fingerboard. I can adjust these levels so the colors show elevation. The highest points are highlighted in red, and the lowest points are colored in green or sometimes blue. I can also add another layer. Right there, you can see it's showing up right here on the nut. So you can see that the highest point of the nut is actually on the base side and the front of the nut. This is normal, right? This is how it should be. So let's keep lowering this gray level. And you can see that now it's hitting the frets a little bit. So I'm going to have to enlarge this to show you. You can see the gray showing up on top of these frets. and then here we don't see it anymore, but we see it on this fret. So it seems like we have a high spot on the fretboard right here. And as you recall, I loosened the truss rod completely before I scanned the fingerboard, so it should be flat. We shouldn't be seeing a hump in the middle. So let's keep lowering this gray level. You can see how it's spreading as I'm basically lowering a plane that's now coloring everything in gray, and it's starting from the highest points. So if I keep lowering that, you can see that it's going to hit the fingerboard. And I want to add some red to highlight it better. And here you can clearly see that we do in fact have a high spot here and a low spot here, and then seems to be a slightly higher spot here. So from what I'm seeing, the fingerboard has a little bit of a curve like this. And, you know, if you want to be picky, we shouldn't be seeing this. There's another way to look at this. I have to change some parameters, and I'll show you. So this time, I'm going to start deleting all of the low spots on this fingerboard. And you can see that it's taking away material from the side. And if I stop around here, now this shows the same thing. It shows that the fingerboard, in fact, has a high spot here, a low spot here, and then a slightly elevated area right here. Now, you also notice that the inlays appear to be lower than the fingerboard, and that's actually not the case. So that's just something that the scanner does because of the way that the laser light is being reflected from the pearl inlays. So that's just the way it picked it up. I could have used the scanning spray, but I opted not to use it because we know what we're looking at, so it's really not an issue. And now comes our bonus material. And I really hope that what you're about to see was not inspired by Gibson.
Usually when we think of bonus materials, we think of something good. There are exceptions, and this is one of them. So I polished the frets, as you can see. Now they're nice and shiny. And I also installed a new nut. Now I just placed it in. This is a Tusk XL nut. This is why you see that print here. It says Tusk XL. And I'm going to file it. So I was just going to restring the guitar. So I took the bridge and, just said, okay, let's put the bridge on. But it turns out that it doesn't fit. So how is that possible? I did remove it. Well, then I looked closer and I discovered that this post, as you can see, is bent. So if it's tilted in this direction, this space is increased, and you basically can't put the bridge on. So you need to make sure that it's turned in this direction, tilted inwards. Now it's kind of narrow enough to put it on, but it doesn't sink all the way. So you actually need to push it down. But now, as you can see, I can when I pull it, I can lift the entire guitar. You're not supposed to be able to lift the entire guitar like that. You're supposed to be able to just adjust these, and then the bridge is supposed to automatically go down if you need to lower the action. So I remember that I was having a hard time pulling it off when I initially removed it, and I wasn't quite connecting the dots then. But now we know that this post is basically bent. So why don't we remove this thumb wheel and have a closer look at this post? You can clearly see that it's bent. So it is bent because I believe that if it was straight, you couldn't even put the bridge on the posts, because the space between the two holes is too far apart, as you can see.
So this now completely changes our rank. Up until now, I thought first place went to the factory worker who filed the nut. But now it turns out that first place should actually go to the guy who drilled the two holes for the bridge posts. And you know what's funny? It wasn't even a guy. And I'm not talking about transgender. I'm saying it wasn't even a person. It was a CNC machine, gender neutral. And this brings me to a point. So CNC machines are trying to replace us because they are more, amongst other things, they're more consistent in what they do. So think about that. What does that mean? Does that mean that every single Les Paul inspired by Gibson is going to be like this, with the bridge posts too far apart because the two holes are drilled too far apart? I don't know. I've only seen this guitar. Now, a person actually installed the bridge, and obviously they couldn't fit it on, so they just bent one of the two bridge posts to kind of wiggle it on like that. And this might have been something that a supervisor came up with, the best solution. So you know how I said that guitar reviews kind of don't make sense because every guitar is different? But they do make sense if we are reviewing the parts of the guitar that are consistently made the same because they are made by, in this case, a CNC machine that's always going to cut the same way. So we're not talking about the holes. We're talking about the guitar body, because unlike the nut, the holes can't be replaced, which is why first place should go to the body of the guitar. So it's a good guitar. You just need to change the body, and the neck is attached to the body. You can keep everything else, change the body, reassemble, and you'll have a, guitar without this problem. And while you're reassembling, might as well change the nut because it wasn't good on this guitar. But that was handmade, right? So there you have it, my friends. This is my review. I wish it could have been a better review, would have been. I guess it could have been, but it wasn't. So, subscribe to the channel and come back for more.